Good evening, everyone who's here on the Zoom, and more people will be involved in the YouTube, which we'll send out. Happy Hanukkah. Hope everyone's enjoying the special Yontif. And remember to light our candles in our own homes. Each night we light an additional candle. And tonight we lit 4 candles. We spent time last week talking about Hanukkah itself. So we're going to catch up on the storyline of what's happening in the Torah readings that relate to these weeks. And even before we begin the summary of this week, just a reminder that what happened last week was that Yaakov is trying to settle down. His sons are out in the pastures. This is last week. He asks Yosef, his son, to go and find out how the brothers are doing. And then the infamous story of the brothers first thinking of killing their brother. They felt that he had overstepped his bounds. In saying that everyone would be bowing down to him, including his parents, that he was actually supposed to be put to death. Then they decided that they would rather put him in a pit, and then they sold him. And he gets taken down and he becomes a slave in Egypt. And the father, Yaakov, sadly thinks that he's lost his son. They bring him a cloak that is soaked in blood. All of that happened last week. Now what happens is, remember there was also Joseph's dreams, that he dreamt that he was going to have all the brothers bow down to him, the stars and the heaven and the sun and the moon and the sheaves in the field. Full stop. We're now starting with this week, which is a continuation of that story. And the opening section of this Shabbat's reading talks about dreams again. Not the dreams of Joseph, but the dreams of Pharaoh. And we're going to contrast the sets of dreams. His dream, Pharaoh's dream, is that there were 7 fat cows that came out of the Nile. Cows don't normally live in the Nile. And they were very, very full, good-looking cows. And they were consumed by 7 gaunt-looking, thin, emaciated-looking cows. And then he goes back to sleep and he dreams a second dream. And in the second dream, there's a whole lot of healthy ears of grain, and they get consumed and eaten up by 7 thin and parched ears of grain. And Paro is now worried about what these dreams mean, especially that he had 2 dreams, both talking about one thing consuming another. And he gets all these wise men together. Nobody was able to give a true interpretation. Then suddenly Paro's butler relates the fact that at the end of last week's reading, there was the story of the butler and the baker who have their own dreams in the jail in Egypt. And Yosef was able to explain what their dreams meant. The one was going to be returned to his job in the palace, the other was going to be executed, and that's exactly what happens. So suddenly the butler remembers that there's a perfect interpreter of dreams. It's Joseph, and he's in the jail. Whoops, I was supposed to, he asked me to mention him to the jailers, and I forgot to do that. I didn't do it. But now, Paro actually needs somebody to interpret his dreams. So he relates his own personal experience with dreams and interpretations. And Paro orders Joseph released, dressed up and cleaned up to appear before the king. Joseph tells Paro that both dreams contain a singular message. What is the singular message? That the 7 fat cows and the 7 fat ears of grain refer to the 7 years of plenty that Egypt is about to go through. But these years of plenty would be swallowed up by 7 years of emaciated cows and grain, which meant that the 7 years following the 7 years of plenty would be 7 years of famine. But now that we know that this is about to happen, he advised that what we should do with the excess grain of these 7 years of plenty, we should store it, put it away, and that way it'll be a reserve and will take care of the future of Egypt. Paro is so greatly impressed. He says, wow, Joseph knows exactly how to interpret a dream. Very good. He appoints Yosef now as the viceroy of Egypt, and he's in charge of all the food collection operation. That's going to happen all the way through Egypt. Now you imagine Yosef, Joseph's life, by being the son, the chosen son, the most loved son of all the brothers in the house of his father. Suddenly he's about to be killed, and then he's sold. Then he's put into a work in Egypt. He's framed on rape charges, which had no reality, and then he's put into jail there. Then he's in jail, out of jail, in the worst of times, and in a second, he's suddenly the viceroy of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself. 30-year-old Yosef was placed second in command of the Egyptian empire. The 7 years of plenty arrive, as foretold by Yosef, and they arrive and they start hoarding the collection. Joseph is very skillful in how the collection is going to take place, and he ensures that there's now going to be silos filled with grain, surplus grain. Now Yosef marries Osnat, the daughter of Potiphera, and she bore for him 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. One related to remembering his father's home, and the other one related to Hashem made him so successful in Egypt. Now, the grave famine that follows affects the whole of Egypt, the entire Mediterranean area. Yosef has sufficient stores of food in Egypt, which he personally sold to all who needed. So now people came and said, we need grain. There was plenty of grain and everyone could buy. And eventually people were ready to sell themselves even as slaves because they needed food to eat. But the famine hits the entire region. So in Canaan, Yosef's father, Yaakov, dispatches his 10 sons, the oldest sons, all of them excepting the youngest one, Binyamin, which was the brother of the same mother to Joseph, the son of Rachel, the most beloved son to Yaakov. And he sends the 10 brothers to go and purchase food and provisions. The brothers arrived, and although they're one of the multitude of people who are coming to find food, to buy food, somehow Yosef encounters them. They don't recognize who he is. I mean, not only is he in the interim grown older and grown a beard probably, he was a child then, but also they'd sold him as a slave, and now they're standing before the second in command of the whole of Egypt. There's a lot of drama, there's a lot of power in this encounter. The brothers have no clue that they're standing in front of their brother. But Joseph recognizes them. He turns to them and he accuses them of espionage. Rashi actually explains that they came in through a whole lot of different entrances. They didn't want to draw attention to their family. They were actually also looking. They wanted to do teshuvah for having sold Yosef. They were hoping that they might find him to bring him home. They entered through different, and Joseph follows up, and he says, well, why, if you're coming to buy grain, why are you coming at different gates, different entrances to the city? And he does these trumped-up charges that they are coming to spy out the land of Egypt. Puts them all in jail for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Yosef comes with a plan. I'm going to release you all except for one of you. I'm going to hold back as collateral. I'm holding on to Shimon. Reuven, Shimon. Shimon was the second oldest of all of the brothers. And he says to the brothers, you can go, but you now have to return with the one brother you left behind. That was Binyamin. So we've got to bring him back down to Egypt. I want to set eyes on him, and he's your passport to freedom. You got to bring him to prove that all that you said in front of me is true, and that you are innocent and you're not spies. Binyamin is the key to ensure that you are not going to be treated as spies. The brothers recognized this is all crazy. All they did was they came down to buy food. They're coming into the hypermarket, and suddenly they're told that they are spies, and they got to bring Binyamin. They realize things are not normal, and that all of this is a punishment for what they did to their brother Yosef, that they now have to bring Binyamin down to Egypt as well. Now, Joseph does something else. He plants all the monies that they paid for their grain, he puts it back into their sacks, and the brothers now arrive back in Canaan, and they discover that they have all of this money returned to them. Now it's even getting worse and worse. How did the money get there? And they tell their father Yaakov the whole story, that they have to take Binyamin, the son that Yaakov did not want to allow to go down to Egypt. They have to bring him down. Yaakov was upset initially, refused. He was the only remaining son of his beloved wife Rachel. But eventually the food provisions ran so low, Yehuda personally guarantees to Binyamin, Binyamin's safe return to Yaakov. He says to his father, Miyadit, You will receive him from me. If any harm comes to him, then you can take it out on me. And obviously there was a very silly thing to say, a son saying that, I don't bring my brother, if there's any harm, then harm could happen to me. He was also a son. Certainly wouldn't help Yaakov, if anything happened to Binyamin, that now something should happen to Judah as well. But it showed that he was ready to take accountability and responsibility. The brothers now arrive in Egypt with Binyamin. Joseph instructed his palace and supervisors to invite the brothers to join him for the afternoon meal. The brothers were reunited with Shimon. Remember, he'd been held as collateral back down in Egypt. And the brothers present gifts to Joseph. They also return the money that was put into their sacks and said, we don't know, we came back and the monies we paid were returned. We want to give back that money. Joseph still conceals his deep emotion when he sees Binyamin. This is his younger brother of the same mother. He holds back, he does not reveal himself. At the meal, Joseph presents them with gifts, and he gives Binyamin a much bigger gift than any of the others. So he treats Binyamin completely differently. He also throws in a few tricks. He looks at his goblet and he says, I will now seat you in the order of your birth. And he does the order because he knows it's his brothers after all. But they think that this Joseph has supernatural powers. He's using this goblet, which is a miraculous goblet. And with that, he's able to see who sits where at the table. They're overwhelmed. They can't believe how powerful this man, the second in command of Pharaoh, is in Egypt, not knowing that it's actually their brother. Now, the brothers are departing, and Joseph takes this goblet, this miraculous goblet, and he plants it where? In the suitcase, in the satchel of Binyamin. The brothers are now leaving. They've taken leave of the palace, leave of Egypt. Sure, thank God, they're on their way home. They've got their brother with them. They've got the provisions, all that they needed. It's all over. Not so fast. Joseph sends his servants. They pursue the brothers. And they say, you have stolen the goblet, that miraculous goblet. We're going to not let you get away with this. We're going to search all the satchels. And obviously the brothers are saying, search, no problem. We would never touch the goblet. And then they discover the goblet in Binyamin's satchel. The brothers are not sure. Did Binyamin actually take it or not? Is it planted? Is it a frame-up? The brothers were all brought back to Joseph, who now demands that the thief Binyamin alone has to remain behind to be a slave because he stole the goblet, which he didn't really. It was placed there by his brother. This is like so full with emotion. You could literally have the pathos of a staged production, couldn't touch the emotion and the details that unfold. This whole web of insinuations and framing and saying what your intention is, and it wasn't their intention, innocent, guilty, unbelievable. Needs a lot of explanation. We're going to go through some of them. Firstly, we're going to talk about the fact that it can't be a coincidence that last week we spoke about Joseph having two dreams. We didn't actually do it because last week we dealt with Hanukkah instead of the portion of the week. But we dealt with Joseph having two dreams, telling his brothers that there's the sun and the moon and the stars, and they're all bowing to one of the stars. 11 stars. And obviously the brothers know who is 11 and who's the 12th one. So he's implying that his father and his father and the wives are going to be together with their children bowing down to Joseph. And he tells them, no, not only that, I had another dream. Well, first the one with the sheaves in the field, and all the sheaves bow down to his sheaf, and then stars in the heaven. Can't be a coincidence that we have then at the end of the portion dreams again, the dreams of the baker and the butler in the jail, which is now the avenue for the butler to know that he can interpret dreams, and tells Pharaoh. And now you have Pharaoh's two dreams. So they're very similar. Firstly, they're similar in that there was two dreams. Both of them Joseph had two dreams. Pharaoh has two dreams. Both of them are talking about future events that are going to unfold. So there are many similarities between the dreams. But now let's discover the differences. What's the difference between the way Pharaoh dreams and the way Yosef, Joseph dreams? And the Rebbe points out that if you take a look at Joseph's dreams, it begins with binding sheaves in the field. And then the second dream is stars in the heaven. His dreams escalate, they develop, they grow, they move from a lower situation to a higher situation. Here they are in the field, and before you know it, they're up in the celestial bodies, up in the heaven, up in the sky. Joseph's dreams grow. Paro's dream, by contrast, is the reverse direction. Paro starts dreaming about cows, which is the realm of life, that is the animal. Animals are a higher form of existence than the next dream, which talks about sheaves, or actually grain that came out of the river, and the emaciated ones consumed the full ones. But his dreams move downwards from the realm of the animal down into the world of the vegetative. Paro's dreams do not grow. Secondly, another difference is that in Joseph's dreams, he begins by saying, we were binding sheaves in the field. His dream begins with the fact that they were actively involved in doing something. Whereas Paro is sitting on the side of the river and he's watching. And there is a huge difference between the player and the spectator. The player makes it happen. The spectator just says, I saw it unfold. So teaching us how to dream, Joseph's dream, who dreams as a Jew should dream with dreams growing in intensity, in quality, in reach, from the lower to the higher. Secondly, and maybe the reason why that is able to be achieved, is because a Jewish dream is filled with our participation and our action. In order to achieve our dreams, we need to work for them. We need to make it happen. We're not like Paro, who sits on the sides and watches it happen. And it just came to mind that in the United Nations, once Abba Eban, who actually had originally South African origins, he was, I think, from Durban, from South Africa, and he went on to become Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, and he was once talking about the dream of Israel. And somebody pulled him at his sleeve and said to him, you're talking about all of the wonderful things that Israel hopes to achieve, but you are just dreaming. You are dreaming. And Abba Eban famously answered, I might be dreaming, but I'm not asleep. There is a Jewish dream. And the Jewish dream is not when we're schluffing. A Jewish dream is what we hope to achieve and attain. Our hope, our greatest desire, our deepest emunah, faith and belief. Those are our dreams. They ascend. They go up in order. They start in the field, and eventually they reach for the sky. And we work at them. We are binding. We are involved in our dreams. As opposed to Paro, whose dreams descend, they get less and less and less, and there's no action. Maybe that's the reason that dreams are suddenly just lost in the passage of time. What happens is, when Paro says, wow, you're amazing, you are the great person who can interpret dreams, Yosef answers and he says, El Halikim Yaneh, God will respond for Paro's peace. So, although Yosef has had such a difficult time, such a painful experience in family, and now slave in Egypt, now coming out, he constantly espouses emunah, faith in Hashem. He is a walking Kiddush Hashem. He's constantly talking about the role that God plays in the success of his life. And he doesn't turn around and say, yes, I'm the greatest. Look what I achieve. Look what I do. I'm amazing. As somebody who is endowed with and given so much power could let it get to his head. He always saw that his personal achievements were in the light of what Hashem had blessed him. And so it should be all of us. When we look at the blessings of Hashem, when we have things to be grateful for, we should always acknowledge and be humble. We said last week, I am so small 2 weeks ago. From all of the kindnesses that you have done for me, Hashem, I'm humbled. It doesn't make me arrogant. It makes me humble to know that you've given me much more than I deserve. Now Paro says to Joseph, now I've set you over the entire land of Egypt. As we mentioned before, look what Yosef goes through. He's up, he's on the top of the world, he's on the bottom of the world. He's a slave, and then he's lifted up and becomes a powerful person. Then he's framed on rape charges back into the jail, and then he's pulled up, and he's now suddenly, he goes through all of the vicissitudes of life, up and down and roundabouts. And through all of this, Yosef remains Joseph. When he's down, he's Joseph. When he's up, he's Joseph. He is the same integrity, the same person, the same qualities, the same commitments. Wherever you put him, he is the same. He is emes, he is truth. He is wherever he is, the fullness of his being. And what gives him the strength? So one of the episodes that happened last week, when he was framed on rape charges by the wife of Potiphar, so it says that at the time there was a thought, it came to his mind as a human being, that maybe he should succumb to temptation, and he should allow himself to consort with this temptress. And then suddenly, he suddenly closed his eyes, and he saw in the eyes of his mind the presence of his father. He was attached to something that represented absolute qualities, absolute values. And holding on to that was his anchor. No matter where he went, he was connected to his source, like a tree that is connected through its roots to the earth, and therefore can grow through all of the seasons of life, the summers, the winters. It's able to sustain itself for thousands of years, longer than any other living creature in this world, living being. Trees. They're connected to their source. Yosef remained connected to his source, and therefore, if he was the second in command of Egypt, or he was in a cellar, in a pit, in a jail, he was the same Joseph. Wherever he was, he remained connected to the most important things of his life. Now, the Hebrew language is so beautiful, because sometimes words mean things, and then they connote things beyond the obvious. But the words is that Jacob saw that there was grain in Egypt. Jacob, back in the land of Canaan, saw that although there was famine in the land of Canaan, where he was living, he saw that there was grain in Egypt. Next verse says he heard about it. What's the word for grain? Well, actually, Rashi translates the word shever. Vayar Yaakov, and Yaakov saw ki yesh shever. Shever actually means a market, a place to buy and sell, but it also means grain. There was sustenance, there was supplies in Egypt. Now the word for supplies or for grain is shever. Var means grain, shever. But the Hebrew word for shever has another connotation. The same letters, they make up the same root. Shin, bet, resh. Shever means broken. In modern Hebrew today, shavur means something is broken. Ani shavaretze, I broke it. Vayar Yaakov ki yesh shever b'Mitzrayim. Yaakov saw that there's opportunity, there is produce, there is a source of survival in Egypt. But he also saw ki yesh shever b'Mitzrayim. There's a potential possibility of being broken in Egypt, morally, religiously, spiritually, and as it turns out, physically. There was going to be tremendous slavery for the Jewish people in Egypt leading up to the story of Pesach. And it's really the story of our lives, because in every situation, yesh shever, there's opportunity, and there is the possibility of failure. God forbid, brokenness, terrible failure. And we go into every situation in life knowing that we can turn the shever into a shever. We can turn that which is broken into something that sustains and that can give food and enable and develop and be the answer to all the woes of life. We shouldn't be undone by the shever, by the things that would otherwise break us. Because if we look deeper, we can see in them the opportunities of growth. And even the Jewish people that were destined to go through shever, tremendous brokenness, they were going to become slaves in Egypt, as foretold to Abraham, our forefather, many years before. that we were going to spend years and years in Egypt. But in the end of the day, Yetziat Mitzrayim, going out of Egypt, the Geula, the redemption, brought us to this Mount Sinai and brought us to places that we would otherwise never have reached. So sometimes the worst of times are the precursor to the best of times. And there are people in this world that look at sustenance, opportunity, and only see the brokenness. And there are other people in this world that look at the broken pieces and see the opportunity. And that's what we have to be. There are a lot of things that could go wrong in Egypt, but there is opportunity that we've got to translate into growth and development in our own lives. And with us, we come to what I wanted to spend the most time on, and this is the obvious question of this week's portion, the big picture. Look what happens. Joseph sees his brothers and he recognizes them, but he acted as a stranger to them and he spoke harshly to them. And as we read before, he accused them of being spies. And the obvious question is, why did Yosef not reveal himself immediately? In actual fact, the dreams had been fulfilled, 90% of it, more. All the brothers came down and they prostrated themselves in front of the second in command of Egypt and thereby actually fulfilled everything that happened in the dream. So Joseph was sitting on an opportunity now of having his dreams completely fulfilled. Maybe he was waiting for the moment when they would come after he tests them and says that the baby brother Binyamin has to remain behind, and then they really come and bow in front of him. Maybe he's waiting for that moment. He wants to fulfill the dream in the fullest measure, and if he turns them into absolute dependence on him, makes their life absolutely miserable to the point that they completely subdue themselves and submit themselves to him. But would that be a reason not to reveal himself to his brothers? Is Joseph wanting to take revenge? And this is how he takes the sweet revenge to make them suffer as he had suffered so much. How could we ever say that about Yosef? Particularly, not only was he inflicting pain on his brothers, he was inflicting pain on his father. Yaakov did not know that his son was alive. At the first opportunity, Yosef should have let his father know that he was alive, even before the 7 years of plenitude had ended and the brothers had come down to Egypt. This question is even bigger than that. As soon as Yosef was made second in command of Egypt, which meant that he had the power and the wealth to order wagons, he could have ordered an Uber and sent it to pick up his father and bring him to Egypt, or have taken a day off work, a week off work, and gone to see his father. Why didn't he do that? For 7 years, he was in charge of Egypt, and he doesn't let his father know that he's alive. Now he has the opportunity to tell the brothers, and he tells the brothers, not only must you now prove that you're innocent and you're not slaves, you're not spies, the whole trumped up charge of spies. What's he doing? Why is he doing that? And then he says, bring Binyamin, which is now going to break his father's heart completely, that he now has to release the youngest brother, the one that is the only remaining son of his beloved wife Rachel, and he's now going to send him as well his way. What was Yosef playing with? He was playing with the emotions of his brothers, and as bad as that is, much more than that, he's playing with the emotions of his father. His father, where he has an obligation of kibbud av, of wanting to honor his father and absorb, take away any pain that he could possibly have had. And here he's just prolonging the agony. And there's a lot of details. The fact that he holds back Shimon, the brother Shimon, as collateral when he sends the brothers away. Then when Binyamin comes, he frames Binyamin. He keeps Binyamin there. The fact that he gives Binyamin in front of the brothers more portions of all the gifts that he was giving to them, he gives more to Binyamin in front of the brothers. What was Yosef trying to achieve? This is a glaring question of how somebody as great as Yosef could possibly have behaved in a way that was going to inflict pain on his father and on the brothers. And yes, as I said, some of the commentaries say, well, he had dreams, and the dreams had to be fulfilled, so he was taking it till the end. He was going to let these brothers bow in front of him and hovel and grovel in front of his feet. And that would fulfill his dreams. Nobody has a mitzvah to fulfill your dreams at the expense of another human being, and least of all at the expense of your father. This question is so glaring. And the answer has to do with the big picture. Because if we journey with this carefully, we're going to see that Joseph, has a huge task in front of him. And he is looking at a much bigger picture than finding quick fixes that are going to answer immediate pain and possibly cause much more. Because this is what Joseph was thinking. Imagine if I now reveal myself as the brother Joseph, the one that my brothers sold, first wanted to kill, sold to slavery, and then took a bloodied garment, my special garment, and took it to our father and told our father that an animal had devoured or killed their brother. So imagine if he reveals himself to his brothers right now, and that message gets to the father, and the father would be now so excited that the son that he thought he had lost, Joseph, he didn't lose. In fact, he's alive. In fact, not only is he alive, he is in charge of the whole of Egypt, second in command to Pharaoh. Imagine how happy he would be. And simultaneously, as he gains the son that he thought he had lost, he would lose the other 10 sons whom he thought that he had as children. Because what would Yaakov be thinking when the news suddenly breaks that there wasn't a wild animal, that the brothers had decided to kill or then eventually to sell their brother into slavery, that the brothers deceived their father and brought this bloodied cloak to prove that their brother was dead. And this is what they bring to their father. And for all of these years, all the 10 brothers had deceived their father, had sold their brother, had caused pain to the family, had behaved in a way that Yaakov could never, ever forgive them. So Yosef has this dilemma. I can reveal myself. I can sort myself out. I can make my father happy that he has the son that he thought he lost. Wonderful. But at the same moment that that becomes known to my father, he will then realize what the 10 brothers did. They sold their brother. And now the father would have a broken relationship with 10 of his sons for the rest of his life. This is like a heavy dilemma. For me, I can resolve my relationship with my father. I miss my father so much. I've been thinking about him all the time. He's the one that held me strong all through all the travails that I went through in Egypt. I now have the opportunity of seeing him, embracing him, and my life is resolved. But there's the big picture. Where does the family stand in this? What is the consequence on the family? What's going to be the relationship between a father and his 10 sons that he thought he trusted and he believed in and that he had until now? As Yosef is revealed, the revelation includes the damaging, unfixable crime performed by these 10 brothers against the younger brother. So Yosef thinks he's a very smart individual, and he thinks much, much bigger than the individual moment and the specific detail. He has to resolve the big picture. And the only way that he can resolve the big picture is if he can prove that the brothers who behaved abominably in the past have done teshuvah. Because we know, when we stand in shul on Yom Kippur, we are able to resolve so many broken elements of our relationship with Hashem. We know that in order to fix our relationships with each other, we have to fix the relationships with one another. And when we do, it's called teshuvah. We're told that you should forgive somebody who has wronged you and is now asking for forgiveness. Yosef knows the key to holding the whole family together is to reconstruct the family in a way that Joseph can return to his father, and the father knows that the brothers have done teshuvah, that the terrible crime that they did all those years before is not where they are today. They're in a totally different place. They have done teshuvah. They've repented, and they're standing in a totally different place. And then the father will receive the lost son, and he'll look at his children with so much pain for what they've done to him over these years, but he'll stare at them and realize that they have done teshuvah. They've repented, and they've resolved, and they've fixed the terrible state that they were in when they sold their brother. And who's the key to that? Who is the key that is going to prove to Joseph, to the brothers themselves, and to the father that the brothers have done teshuvah completely? It's the brother Binyamin. Binyamin is the brother of the same mother. The other brothers were jealous of Yosef because he came from the favorite wife and was treated differently. And Binyamin was treated differently. How do we know that Binyamin was also treated differently from the brothers? Because the father says to the 10 brothers, go down to Egypt, but not Binyamin. Binyamin is the love of my life. I cannot possibly think of losing Binyamin. So Binyamin is the key. He is the replica of Joseph. And if he, Joseph, can show that the brothers stand up for Binyamin in a way that they didn't stand up for their brother Joseph, and that Binyamin, notwithstanding the fact that he is the favorite son, as Joseph was and was hated for, and the jealousy of the brothers consumed them back then, now, notwithstanding they have reason to be jealous of Binyamin, their attitude is completely different to their youngest brother. So Joseph says, I need Binyamin. You want to prove you're innocent? I need him here. Doesn't let them know who he is. They have no idea who they're standing in front of. And when Binyamin comes, he gives him gifts more than everyone else. He replicates exactly what his father did to Joseph many years before. He made him this beautiful coat. He treated him uniquely and differently. Joseph now treats Binyamin in front of the brothers, doing much, much more for him than for the other brothers. There's another detail. Why did Joseph specifically keep back the brother Shimon when he holds collateral and says, I'm holding on to one of you until you bring Binyamin? Why would Shimon be the person more than anyone else? Because remember, the oldest brother was Reuven, and Reuven actually was trying to save Joseph when he was being sold all those years ago. Remember, he said, no, don't kill him, and he put him in a pit, and he was hoping to come and retrieve him from the pit and save him. By the time he got back, he wasn't there. So who would be the brother that would bear the brunt of the mistake that had happened when they sold their brother Joseph many years before? Who was second in command there? Reuven was the one that was trying to save his life. Who was then the next brother that would be accountable for the terrible happening of the sale of their brother? It would be Shimon. So Shimon would be feeling much, much more guilty once Joseph reveals himself than the other brothers, and also more fearful that Joseph might want to take revenge. So Joseph holds on to Shimon, keeps him in Egypt, can do anything he wants with him, and in so doing shows that in notwithstanding that he could have taken it out on Shimon, when the story breaks, he looked after Shimon. He didn't, in fact, do him any harm whatsoever. He treated him very well while he remained in Egypt. And he had the power to take revenge and to kill him or to do whatever he wanted to him. But that wasn't obviously what Joseph wanted to do. So back to Binyamin. What does Joseph now do? As the brothers are leaving, supposedly having proved their innocence, he now places the goblet, this power of Egypt, the supernatural power goblet, he puts it in the knapsack of Binyamin. And when the brothers are saying, search, search, there's nothing to find, we're innocent, we haven't done anything wrong. And then it is found in the satchel of Binyamin. Binyamin is now being such a problem to the brothers. He is now causing all the brothers to say, we're all slaves to you. We're all going to come submit to you, second in command of Egypt. But in their heart, they could have been thinking, my goodness, what was our youngest brother thinking when he stole the goblet? Did he steal it? Why is it in his satchel? Why would he have taken it? Joseph was playing with the brothers to make it look like the youngest brother was the cause of all the problems in the family, just as the younger brother, Joseph, was to his brothers all those years before. That's what Joseph is trying to do, to see how the brothers will react now that almost when it comes to Teshuvah, it's got to be the same, almost the same conditions, the same situation, and this time round they behave differently. That's why Binyamin was the key. Benjamin now is supposedly the thief of the goblet, and now as we see the opening part of next week's portion, Yehuda gets up and makes this powerful speech of, we've taken a responsibility for our brother. Our father is not going to survive this. If we come back without our brother Binyamin, rather take us as slaves and let Binyamin go. I'll be the slave. You cannot hold on to Binyamin. The brothers stand by. Yehuda, Judah, next week makes a speech that is so emotional, so powerful, taking into account the pain of the father, taking into account the need to restore the son back to the father's house. And it's only after Judah makes that speech that Yosef suddenly, next week, says, Ani Yosef, I'm Joseph. I am your brother. I'm not only the viceroy of Egypt, second in command to Pharaoh. I am your brother. Is our father still alive? That powerful moment is what Joseph is waiting for throughout all of the story unfolding. Because now when they come back to the father and all of the events of the story emerge, the whole big picture of everything that took place, the big picture of the whole family being returned to the loving unit it wanted to be, before it was undone and unraveled with the sale of their younger brother from the favorite wife Rachel, Yosef, being sold into slavery. Now when the story unfolds, and now when they come to the father, and not only does the father discover that Joseph is alive and that he's ruling over Egypt, but he also discovers the story that the brothers sold their younger brother. And the brothers behaved in such a terrible way. But now they are clearly in the clear because they have done teshuvah. Joseph will relate to his father that these brothers stood by Binyamin, who they could have been equally jealous of him as they were jealous of me many years ago. He caused the problem of having the goblet in his suitcase, and therefore could have been the projection of all the anger could have been at this younger whippersnapper brother from the favorite wife, from the favorite of the father, and taken it out on him. But they don't. Now they stand by him 100%. Now Joseph can reveal himself. Now Joseph can go to his father because he has resolved the big picture. And the message for all of us, this is unbelievable. It is incredible to look at the whole unfolding of this story, which just seems like some kind of emotional play unfolding. The emotion it's incredible what we go through in this Shabbat's reading, and last week, and next week. The message for all of us is that sometimes there are shortcut solutions to problems. Sometimes we could fix the problem for ourselves easily, and we could jump at it and do whatever we think is going to be the answer to our problems. But in so doing, how are other people affected? We cannot resolve our problem by creating a bigger problem for somebody else. The big picture means, what does it do for my people Israel? How does my family get affected? How does my people get affected? What is my role amidst my people, not just in isolation? How am I impacting on a whole world? It's not just about me. Joseph teaches us that story so profoundly. It's not just about me and my father. That I could have resolved years ago. I needed to look at the entire family, the health, the emotional well-being, the psychological well-being, the relationships that are going to be there for the rest of our lives as a family. So we've reached the end of our time. Thank you so much for joining. Have a beautiful, beautiful Hanukkah. And please God, I think there will be a share. I'll let you know if there's going to be a class next week. And even if people are far away are able to listen on the YouTube and if they're unable to join us. Thank you for being with us. Good Shabbos and a good Hanukkah.